Cinemajaw is sponsored by Overcast, an independent podcast app that embraces the open world of podcasting instead of locking it down. No exclusives, no premium content, no paywalls. Just a great podcast app for everyone. Get it for free in the App Store.
And we thank them for their support. You're listening to Cinemajaw, the greatest movies podcast ever, recorded on location from our respective homes in Chicago. My name is Matt Kay, and with me is
Quarry, the movie guy. And this week on Cinemajaw, Matt, we feel a little guilty about doing this podcast every single week because we have so much fun, and we know others aren't having as much fun as we're having, and that makes us feel guilty, doesn't it?
But hopefully they're listening to this and getting the same amount of fun that we're having. And so, no, I don't feel guilty about doing the podcast, Rye. I feel guilty about having to do it with you.
I was going to say, I know you have to feel guilty about something.
Yeah. Oh, plenty, brother. Plenty.
This week on Cinemajaw, we are covering our top 5 movies that have to do with guilt. These aren't guilty pleasures. Let's clarify. The theme of the movie is guilt.
Yeah, that is an important distinction because I threw this out on Facebook and I heard a lot of people giving me their guilty pleasures. So
we're covering our top 5 favorite movies dealing with guilt because we're reviewing a movie that deals with such a topic.
The Quarry, a new film starring Michael Shannon, who we're celebrating this month.
Can't wait to talk about that movie. Also, if the Jawheads will recall, the last time we played Stump the Kabinski, you did get one right, Matt K.
I sure did. And it only took me 3 weeks, was it? So 9 questions. Well, the tables have turned, buddy, because now it's my turn to Stump the Movie Guy.
Yes, we are going to play Stump the Movie Guy for the first time in Cinemajaw history. We also have some Hollywood headlines, interesting stories to get out to the Jawheads. And it is also the last week we will be celebrating the great Michael Shannon.
Yes. Shannon was recently asked if he's attracted to dark, villainous characters or playing people with serious mental issues. And he answered, "I don't think I set out to play villains necessarily. I try not to look at any character I play as being a villain or a hero, just more what their circumstances are, what they're trying to deal with. I mean, every character can be seen in a different light. People in general do some things that are considered good and some things that are considered not so good. I think we all wrestle with how we feel about ourselves and whether we are happy with what we do in our lives and try to look at most characters from that point of view. I mostly just look for good writing, interesting characters that have the most depth or the most mystery or the most challenge to play, not necessarily how they are perceived."
I have to say that is a great way to tackle a role and to be looking for interesting characters, like he says. Yeah. Not necessarily looking at it like, hey, he's the villain or he's the hero, but looking at it as interesting character and how the people would perceive him. Sure, but the way he's going to play it is that character's doing what he thinks is right.
That kind of shines through in his work because even in a film like, I think most people are very familiar with like Shape of Water, where he is sort of the antagonist, he still brings this level of, I don't want to say empathy because he's kind of a sleaze in that movie, but you at least sort of start to feel the pressure he's going through. Yeah, he's the bad guy, but he makes you feel for them. And I think that's the mark of a truly gifted actor.
Mm-hmm. It's been fun celebrating Michael Shannon, learning all these interesting little tidbits about that fine actor.
Cinemajaw mailbag.
Matt, the other interesting thing is we've been getting a lot of feedback, and we said that we're going to do a good job of discussing it here on the show. And we had not heard from Flicker Joe, one of our favorites. And that worried me because Flicker Joe usually will chime in, and we know that Flicker Joe's listening along and he's got his lists. And I thought, boy, I hope he's well and healthy. Well, finally, an email came in from Flicker Joe, and he recapped a bunch of shows. He gave us top 5s, but let's just say his number 1 debut performance was Christian Bale. And he agreed with you, Matt, but a different movie. You were wrong. It wasn't Newsies. It was Empire of the Sun.
I did get that one wrong, but Newsies is still a very early Bale entry.
On to greedy characters, greed in film. His number 1 was Citizen Kane, which we didn't talk about. Great pick, Joe. And then finally, I will give you his top 5 shapeshifters. Number 5 is Disney villains, right? The female Disney villains, Madame Mim, Maleficent, Snow White's Witch, Ursula, tons of them that you can pick from there. Number 4, Count Dracula. He prefers the Christopher Lee version. Number 3, Mystique from the X-Men. Number 2, Finn Razel from Willow.
Ah, yes. Great one. Good one, Joe.
I agree. Absolutely. We didn't mention that one. And number 1, T2, which I talked about at the end of the show. I was stunned that nobody had mentioned it. I left it off because I was so sure it was going to be everybody's number 1. He finishes out with, thanks for the entertainment, Cinemajaw, Flicker Joe. Joe, glad to hear from you. Glad to know that you're healthy and listening to Cinemajaw.
Yes. Thanks, Joe. It is nice to hear from all the Jawheads all the time. And in fact, in that vein, Ryan, here's the next email. This one comes from Dion from East Lansing, who wrote in to say, hey, you guys, first I'll say I'm so happy you guys are podcasting. I listen to a lot of podcasts. In this time of isolation, podcasts have been a lifeline for those of us who live alone and crave the sound of other human voices. Yours in particular is one I really enjoy, and as silly as this sounds, when I go to bed Sunday night, it gives me a little lift to know that Monday sometime I'll have a new Cinemajaw podcast to listen to. I cannot be the only person who feels that her or his podcasts and the people on them are a stand-in for our absent friends. Now, I must say one thing. I doubt that I am the only person who was yelling at her phone while Matt Kay complained about Charlie Hunnam not doing a good English accent. How quickly you all seem to forget The Lost City of Z from 2 years ago, where Hunnam did a remarkable job portraying real-life British explorer Percy Fawcett. Why do you suppose that James Gray cast Hunnam in the role of a British explorer? Could it be because he's British? Here in America, there are dozens of variations of an American accent, and I'm sure that is the same in England with English accents. Perhaps Mr. Hunnam's accent from the north of England, where he was raised, is a variation you're not familiar with, which might lead you to think it was phony. Keep up the good work and stay safe. Dion, East Lansing.
Oh, I love it. I'm so happy that I said that I wasn't very familiar with Charlie Hunnam. I hadn't seen Sons of Anarchy. I have seen him in The Lost City of Z, which is a fantastic film. I'm glad Dion mentioned that one. But I'm not familiar if he was English or American, but you were so sure he was American.
Pacific Rim, first of all, Ryan, you're familiar with that movie. He's on this show, Sons of Anarchy, which is so American. It's about a biker gang in somewhere in the southwest of America that I guess I did. I just thought he was an American. I had no idea that he was British. So thanks, Dion. Now I have egg on my face, as they say, and feel foolish, but I do appreciate the correction. And I must say, your letter actually really moved me. And it's great to know that we're making a difference through this difficult time we're in right now.
I agree. It's a small difference, but it's a difference, Matt. And that put a smile on my face as well. Warmed me.
Me too.
We've been doing some retro reviews. These are little extra reviews that tie in with the theme of the month. And last month's theme, Pixar, took us a little while to coordinate it. But if you haven't heard it, we did a retro review of Monsters U. And we actually got our old producer and editor, Phil, out in California to call in and be part of that little retro review. We heard some feedback on that. And two of them, Sarah Brightwell wrote in saying, I just wanted to let you know I'm enjoying the smaller retro reviews. It was especially nice to hear Phil back on Monsters U episode. My family loves Monsters, Inc. and Monsters U. Stay safe, Sarah from Portland. And also our friend Darren Mordecai from Facebook chimed in, said, good to hear Phil on the show again. And also, I like the acting debut episode. Good integration with Parker. That is Matt's son. If you guys hear him, who that little kid is talking at the top of the show, reading our ads now. We got child labor on Cinemajaw. Matt has his son reading our ads.
Or you could say that I'm giving him his big break and exposing him to different things in the world, right?
I like child labor. And then also that Matt's wife, Heather, was on the show. He says, well done, guys. Keep up the good work.
And last but not least, we heard from Brad Wysocki, who chimed in about our Best Brothers episode. And he said, sorry, Rye, but I have to side with Matt Kay with his Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pick. I myself was a huge Turtles fan and even went as far as to do full green face 1 year Turtles rock.
Nice. Patreon Brad, thanks for chiming in. I know there's a lot of fans of the Turtles out there. I just wasn't a big Turtles fan. I love the video games, but that's about where my love for the Turtles stopped.
All right, okay. I tell you, watch this movie. It's way better than it has any business being. I'm going out on that limb to say the original Turtles movie is very good. And thank you, Brad, for agreeing with me. I do appreciate that.
There we go. We love getting feedback. Again, our email is feedback@cinemajaw.com. You can also reach out to us via Facebook or Twitter @Cinemajaw, all those good places. Just reach out. We like to hear you, especially in this time when we're all quarantined. Makes us feel like a nice little film family when we get that feedback.
Yeah, I want to echo that and something that Dion had said. It goes both directions. So please, Jawheads, even if you haven't written to us before, it's great to hear from you. So shoot us an email.
There we go.
That's all from the mailbag.
All right, Matt, on to this big review of the Quarry. Guilt is a horrible feeling to be carrying around with you. Having Michael Shannon suspicious of you can be a horrible feeling as well. The latest film, The Quarry, starring Shea Whigham and Michael Shannon, is now out on video on demand. Matt Kay and I hit the bleak landscape of West Texas for this quiet but deadly new film.
I'm looking for the church.
You just passing through, I guess?
Here to work.
You ever live in a town like this? Everybody knows everybody, and people think it's quaint.
We were made right with God through faith in Jesus, not by obeying the law.
I've known a few preachers in my day. You're not like any of them.
Do I know you?
What do you mean?
I just feel like I've seen you before.
Who are you?
I am a sinner.
I mentioned this film stars Shea Whigham, and I'm sure many listeners are like, who? Shea Whigham, that's who. He has been an outstanding character actor for over 2 decades. He has had small roles, but he pops up in films such as Silver Linings Playbook, American Hustle, The Wolf of Wall Street, Bad Times at the El Royale, Vice, Joker. That's just to name a few. In fact, he has over 40 film credits and will be seen in the next Mission Impossible film as well. The Quarry is special because he is the star of the film. He plays a man with a dark past who is trying to find a new life. In his journey to find this new life, he meets a preacher who is on his way to a small town in Texas to take over a church. When they stop in a quarry just outside this town, Whigham's character kills the preacher and takes his identity. This is not a spoiler. This is just setting up the story. The meat of the movie is what follows. Isn't that right, Matt Kay?
Yes, that's right, Ryan. When the man finds the small church, he meets its caretaker, Cecilia, played by Oscar nominee Catalina Sardino Marino. She leads him to his room. When he wakes up, he finds that the van he acquired from his victim in the quarry has been ransacked, which leads him to the chief, played by Michael Shannon. The chief explains to this newcomer that in this small town, he knows everyone and paints the picture of small town life quite vividly. From there, we see the man trying to fit in at the church, interspersed with developments in the case with the van burglary. Eventually, everything begins to come to a boil. What I realized only at the end of the movie, and this isn't a spoiler, just took me a while, is that this is a Western. This same story could have easily been set 150 years ago and work just as well. This is a timeless tale of regret, twisted law, murder, religion, and at the center, a nameless drifter. Just add tumbleweed. Though starkly bleak in tone, there is a beauty to the movie's simplicity. These events, while not always unexpected, are deeply relatable. One can put oneself into the shoes of nearly any of the characters and expressly understand their motivations and empathize with their beliefs quite easily. That, I believe, is the mark of some very human writing. I've seen that the star rating on this has been low, and I think that could be specifically because the tone is so dark. Seen through the Western movie lens, I think that it works. You called the movie quiet. Yeah, too quiet. That could also be another big ding. And Michael Shannon, the shining core of this film, is sadly a bit underused. While I liked the brooding mood, it could also be a case of bad timing, as I think folks who are stuck inside during this shutdown are not looking for a dark film about being stuck in a small town and the fleeting meaninglessness nature of life. This is a campfire tale, best told over a can of pork and beans and a flickering flame. Timeless and bleak. I liked it. Just know what you're getting into. Do you agree, Rye? Was this a Western?
It's funny because when I finished watching it, I did not think anything like, yes, I was watching a Western. But listening to you go over that review, it qualifies. And I think it works as a Western. You're right. The drifter going into town.
Yeah, there's a lawman. There's a lady who's got, she's a complicated character.
Right. And well, I think that's part of the beauty of the film is we get to know these characters so vividly with the short time. As soon as we sort of meet them, we get the idea of who these characters are, things that they've been through in their life and why they would make the decisions that they make. Maybe it just needed some more horses. And I would have said, yes, it's a Western.
Oh, man. I mean, just add, like I said, just add tumbleweed, a horse, and immediately you would have been like, oh, this is a Western.
Yeah. So you called it dark. I called it quiet. It's definitely a slow burn. I say that not in a negative way. I'm saying it because it helps to know what you're going in for when you sit down to watch a movie, because you need to pick a good time to watch this movie. And you're right. Maybe right now being, sort of trapped inside, you're not thinking dark, quiet, slow burns. So just know what you're going in for. And I think it'll help you enjoy the movie. You talked about Michael Shannon's character. Mm-hmm. I talked about him being suspicious of Shea Whigham's character.
Yeah, I want to talk about this.
Right? I felt that at some points that suspicion fades. Or was I wrong? Or
Yes.
was he downplaying it a little bit at times and still suspicious of him? How did you feel that whole thing vibed out?
All right. Well, we're sort of treading into minor spoiler. Okay, I'm going to be careful, but if anybody listening like really wants to go into this pure, I respect that. Just know that I'm not spoiling anything, but I'm treading water here. So I think at some point, Michael Shannon just pure flat out knows the truth. He's figured it out. He's seen enough of the clues and evidence, and he just knows. He's not a dumb person. I think that he makes a decision at some point as to what is better for his town.
I've thought that also. It's interesting. You really 100% think that?
Yes.
There was one scene where I thought when Michael Shannon was talking to the preacher, I think they're like there were certain times I think he comes into the jail, the preacher does, to talk to somebody who's behind bars that they have locked up. And right before they talk to him, Michael Shannon glances like, yes, he's fully aware of the fact that the preacher may be the suspect here, right? But yeah. He doesn't go any further with it.
No, and the courtroom scene in particular, I think, pretty much seals that point of view.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I had an issue with the plot-wise is the fact that Whigham's character, this man who comes in from town with a stolen identity, would even go to the police to mention that his van had been vandalized. If you were in that situation and you were a guy that had already committed crime, you don't want the heat on you, right? So, all right, your van gets vandalized. There's worse things. Don't go to the police and try to start anything. I would have just left it as is. I wouldn't even reported it.
I think in hindsight, it's easy to say that. But at the time, he was just doing what he figured his character had to do. And when I say character, I mean this identity that he's assumed. He would need to go to the police. If he hadn't, that would have seemed more suspicious.
I guess.
That's my point of view on that.
And we've painted this as a very dark, bleak film.
It is.
And it is. But there are two parts that I laughed out loud, and they were both by lines that were delivered by Michael Shannon. I actually wrote them down in my journal right after they were said. One of these is when Michael Shannon is talking to the preacher, and he just says, "You're not a big smiler." Cool. Hilarious line. It's just deadpanned. And the second one is they go to a funeral where only Michael Shannon, the cop, is there, and the preacher is there, and the preacher reads a passage out of the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
And once the passage gets done, Michael Shannon's character says, "That's a weird fucking verse."
Yeah. And it was, too.
I laughed so hard at that. That was hysterical.
Yeah, which also just sort of heaps onto the pile of the theory that Michael Shannon's character knows.
That's true.
One nuance that I found interesting about this movie, because there is a theme of race in the movie. He's in South Texas. There's a large
West Texas, west south, yeah, but west.
Okay, West Texas. Obviously, there's a lot of Mexican people that live in this town. The chief's girlfriend, Cecilia, who's the caretaker of the church, is Mexican. The other people that get mixed up in the whole story. And Michael Shannon's character has this moment. He's obviously not like overtly racist where he has like a hatred, right? But he has some clear racism going on, which is another thing that sort of paints that picture to me that he was willing to make a decision like this. Did you pick up on that?
Yeah, I did. You're right. They didn't make it where it was just so clear that, okay, his character was racist. It's not a character like that. It's just that he has this past experiences. I think they bring up his father being in the town earlier, that you could see why he would have ideas that hint that way.
Well, what I appreciated about it is like usually when you have a racist, especially a racist cop in a movie, it's painted so black and white, like it's binary, like I hate this kind of person and every single one of that kind of person is evil. And that's how I feel. But this wasn't that way. It was honest writing where there were biases and that you could see even the character struggling to make sense of them in his relationships. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I felt that was more true to life. So I appreciated that.
There's also some really nice touches craft-wise in this movie. One I want to highlight is at the beginning, and that's when we actually meet Shea Whigham's character. He's actually laying on the side of the road. A driver, the preacher, goes right by him. We then get this camera view of like sort of inside the back of the truck that the preacher was driving. He pulls over and the camera stays in the truck while the preacher gets out. And we see him walk back to the side of the road all through the side mirror of the car.
Yeah.
That was a great way to start it. And I mean, this is the first probably 5 minutes of the movie. And right away, you know that it's going to have some nice touches like that. Highly appreciate those.
I did. Another one I noticed is, for the most part, there's a very muted color palette, almost washed out by the sun until you get to one scene in particular, which is a baptism scene. And suddenly everything is bright and vibrant. And then the rest of the movie just goes right back to that muted. Even when he's recalling that same scene later on in the film, you see the same muted color palette. Did you pick up on that?
I did. And the baptism scene is intercut with this discovery in the quarry. I just loved that entire sequence. It was awesome.
I did too. I thought this was a really successful movie for what it was.
Movie poster quote for us?
The best new Western of the decade so far.
Wow. He comes out firing.
Bear in mind, it's only 2020, so we got a little ways to go.
I like it. That's good marketing right there, right? I went with the quarry doesn't need to dig too deep to uncover the guilt it hides.
That's a really good quote. Well done, Ryan. How many Jaws you giving this?
I'm going with 2.5 Jaws.
Oof, I was way higher on this film. I'm going full 4 Jaws.
Wow.
There's not too many things to say that this movie didn't do well. I think why it's getting such a negative response is just because people are not in the mood for something that's this grim. But when you look at it through a Clint Eastwood spaghetti Western sort of lens, suddenly it's a lot better. Maybe check it out from that point of view.
Wow. 4 Jaws from Matt Kate, 2.5 Jaws from Ryan the Movie Guy. I would still recommend it at 2.5 Jaws. It's a slight recommend for me. So we're recommending this one. The Quarry cost us, what was it, $6.99 on video on demand, and it's anywhere. So if you're looking to stream something and celebrate Michael Shannon this month, and I don't know if you were, but I was a fan of Boardwalk Empire, and Shea Whigham and Michael Shannon both were in Boardwalk Empire, so it was sort of a reunion to see those two characters.
I'm one of those people that was like, who? I mean, I had never heard of this guy, never seen him before. In fact, for the first 15 minutes of the movie, I thought it was Jason Bateman. Doesn't he sort of look like Jason Bateman in some of the shots from afar?
I don't know. If I was going to say he's somewhat of a lookalike, maybe it's Jeremy Renner.
Yeah, I guess so. I can see it.
I'm at least familiar with him enough, like I said, especially for me being a Boardwalk Empire fan, that I knew who he was.
Nice.
Hopefully this movie, The Quarry, he gets more fans, right?
I'd be willing to see what he's got next, although I have to give this movie to both Michael Shannon and Catalina Sardino Moreno. Those two are really the heart of this movie.
She's in that movie that I've talked about, the drug mules, Maria Full of Grace. That's where she got her Oscar nomination from.
Right.
So I was glad to see her again. So
did she not win for that?
No, nomination, but still worthy though.
For sure.
Worthy nomination. All right. The movie The Quarry does deal with guilt, and that is what we picked out to be our top five this week. Movies dealing with guilt, characters that are ridden with guilt. Matt, you're getting us started.
At number 5, I have a movie that I've discussed here on the Jaw before. It's just such a versatile film. It pops up on a ton of lists, but it's a damn good one. It's by Martin Scorsese himself. One of his lesser appreciated works, Shutter Island.
Which is a good pick.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it on mental health. I can't remember some of the other topics this is listed on, noir, et cetera, et cetera. But at the core of this movie, right down at its kernel, is guilt. The guilt over the loss of a child. And this movie's really old. I'm not spoiling anything. That is sort of the driving force behind the entire mystery. And I don't think that's a spoiler to say anyway. Just a great, harrowing reveal in this movie.
I know I've said it many a times as we discuss Shutter Island. What I like and appreciate so much about the movie is that the twist is so heavy. So many times the twist is a shocking twist, but not heavy in the sense of like, oh, what exactly that means, that reveal actually means about the characters and their past lives. Shutter Island's crushing once you find it out and you see the guilt that he's lived with.
Yeah, almost to the point where I actually have seen this at least 3 times, but it's not a movie that I'll pick to spin like if I'm in a great mood and want an uplifting movie, because it's crushing. My
number 5 pick is from a very well-known director, 2-time Oscar winner now at this point, Alejandro González Iñárritu, won for Birdman and also The Revenant. His lesser-known film, he had came off Amores Perros, which was his first film, which is streaming on Amazon Prime. Can't recommend it enough. And then he came back with this one in 2003, a film that is all about guilt, and it is entitled 21 Grams. Told in a non-linear manner, 3 people's lives are connected and forever after a car accident in which Benicio del Toro is driving a car and kills a husband and 2 children in that car. He leaves the scene of the crime. It's a hit and run, and he leaves. The man who died in that car crash, his heart is donated, which ends up going to Sean Penn's character. Naomi Watts also is in the movie, and she plays the wife of the husband who was killed in the car accident. And then from there, again, nonlinear storytelling, and you're seeing these 3 people and how they're dealing with the after effects of this car accident. Del Toro just feels so much guilt that he just can't continue his life, even though he seems like he would never be caught for doing this hit and run. He feels like he needs to turn himself in and just explain to people that he was the one that caused the car accident. It gets crazier from there. Wonderful story, and one I have only seen one time, and I want to rewatch. And doing the research for this and writing this down, I said, damn it, I'm going to rewatch 21 Grams during this quarantine time. So
nice. Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, I gave myself a tip,
Good for you, Ryan.
It's going to be a good rewatch.
Swings it back to me at number 4. I guess it's almost commonplace now, or at least widely accepted, that Korean cinema, it's a really awesome thing, especially after Parasite's big win at the Oscars. People are suddenly really paying attention. But I really became aware of it, many years before, actually. And this is a film called Old Boy from director Park Chan-wook, who gave us a movie with a character who, in the beginning, and by the way, don't bother with the crappy American remake with Josh Brolin. Just go with the original here. But this character who's abducted and sort of is kept captive in this mysterious hotel room for, I think, a few years, maybe several years, and then gets out, at first does not think he did anything wrong as he goes down this path of revenge, right?
Yeah, by the end, definitely several years.
Several years. But by the end of the film, with the final reveal of exactly what's going on, he feels so much guilt and remorse that he's willing to, let's just say, part with some of his own body in order to sort of repay this debt. It's so twisted. Twisted is the only word you can use to describe the story. And this is part of the Vengeance trilogy, which I've not seen in full. I need to. That's maybe a tip for me for this quarantine, is finally catch up on the entire Vengeance trilogy. Have you seen all three of them, Ray?
I have not. I have only seen Oldboy.
All right. We'll throw it in the job box, the other films. I think Sympathy for Lady Vengeance is one of them, and that could be wrong. And I certainly don't remember the third. But Oldboy was at a time my number one favorite movie, and I've seen it a bunch. Swings it back to you.
There you go. My number 4 pick is a film that came out in 2008. I very famously gave you the DVD and told you to watch the movie. And we're doing this. You watch a film I recommend, and I'll watch one that you do. And the movie I gave you to watch was In Bruges. Colin Farrell, who plays a hitman who's told by his boss, Ralph Fiennes, to go to Bruges and sort of lay low. And if you didn't know, Matt, it's in Belgium. And he's in Bruges, and this is because a hit that he did went wrong. And it's shown in a flashback that he actually killed a child in his last assignment. There's a lot of guilt there when have done something such as this. The partner in this movie, Brendan Gleeson's character, feels so bad for Colin Farrell's character. Like, all he really wants is also for Colin Farrell to have another chance at life and not feel the guilt that he's going to have the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. And of course, that sounds like it's a heavy movie, but I'm sure most jawheads have seen In Bruges. It's become sort of a cult favorite, and everybody knows it's hilarious as well. I mean, it's got a ton of swearing, very funny lines. The situations that these characters find themselves in is hysterical. All around great movie. So I don't want to downplay it, but there is at the center of this movie a big theme about guilt.
Yeah, guilt and sadness is definitely at the center, but it is a hilarious comedy at the same time. That's a good pick, Ryan. Back over to me. And this one is one that I recently watched and was actually a Cinemajaw retro review. I had never seen it before, but holy crap, Rachel Getting Married is a movie that has a central theme of guilt. And this is another one where we talked about this scene. We highlighted it in particular when Anne Hathaway finally comes clean, or at least reveals to the camera exactly what transpired in her life to lay this burden of guilt upon her. It is such a soul-wrenching scene, but she delivers it quite well. It might be her greatest acting moment of her career, is this one monologue where she's in an AA meeting. And yeah, it's, like I said, soul crushing. It's really a tough thing that her character has to live with, and all of those around her.
Indeed. If you haven't listened to the retro review, it's a good time to plug it. We got Rachel Getting Married out on there for the retro review too.
There you go. Guilt and forgiveness, central themes there.
No doubt. My number 3, you mentioned the gentleman's name earlier when we were talking about the Quarry. And I thought, I wonder if Matt's going to go with this pick for his as well. This one is a Best Picture winner. It came out in 1992. It starred and was directed by the great Clint Eastwood. I'm speaking of Unforgiven.
I actually toyed with putting this on my list. The thing is, I've seen the movie, but it's been 15 years, a long time.
I love doing this a lot of times because I wrote this one down, much like I wrote down 21 Grams to rewatch, because it's been a long time for me since I saw Unforgiven. Maybe not that long, but I really would like to see it, in my new setup, on the big screen that I got going, because I remember it being masterful when I saw it. And of course, Clint Eastwood plays Will Money. He's like a former outlaw and murderer who is recruited to kill these 2 guys who have disfigured and mangled a prostitute. And it's his journey is filled with reflection that includes, obviously, guilt about his actions and what it means to take someone's life, if they deserved it or not. It also is like a reflection and guilt on the Western and the violence of the Western that we had seen and grown up with. There's a lot of like reflection on all of that going on as well. It's outstanding. And we're not even getting to the point that it stars also Gene Hackman in the movie as the town's mayor, who says that, no guns are allowed in his town, and also Morgan Freeman. It's outstanding.
That those 3 are pillars of the cinematic world. There's no doubt about it. Unforgiven is a great movie. Just got to refamiliarize myself with it.
Like I say, I'm gonna watch it again myself.
Nice one. At number 2, speaking of pillars of the cinematic universe, This one is Alfred Hitchcock, one of the masters of cinema, rope. Ryan, you guessed it. I don't know. This movie, what's most interesting about it is it was actually filmed, if not in one take. Am I mistaken about that? Certainly one location.
One take, right. It's attempted, in one take with a couple of interesting cuts and when it's dark and they're making turns and stuff.
Right. And now you have to keep in mind, this was also, like 50, 60 years ago that this movie was made?
Yeah, we'll throw it Jawbox.
I think it was black and white originally. And it's about a couple of college kids who had committed a murder, and Jimmy Stewart comes into the hotel room or a house wherever they're staying, starts to suss out exactly what's going on while they're trying to downplay their guilt. And it all comes bubbling to the top slowly but surely, in a very Hitchcockian sort of way, where it's mostly about the psychological and less about the physical.
Agree. That was one I saw not too long ago. I think we were doing our Hitchcock and we were talking about that movie, and I watched it, and tremendous feat for the one take, but also the guilt in the movie. I knew that's right where you were going when you mentioned Hitchcock. My number 2 pick is a Christian Bale performance for the ages.
Oh, okay. And
we've talked about this movie. We did we weren't calling it a retro review, but we took a look at this one. Came out in 2004, The Machinist. Mm-hmm. And this is where he is just awfully skinny and looking terrible. He has insomnia, and due to this, he causes an accident at work, works on a machine line. He has paranoia, and we come to find out it's because he is just filled with guilt for something that transpired earlier in his life that he just can't get over. And it's literally turned him into a shell of a man. That guilt, the entire movie is right about how a person deals with guilt. And this is the worst way to deal with it, but it's the only way this character knew how to do it. It's sad. It's awful. It's another one of those sort of a reveal, very much like Shutter Island, where you realize the core of what's happening is because a man is filled with such guilt that it is literally drove him mad.
Well, this is also my number 1 pick. So let's just let that cat right out of the bag right here. I was thinking about this when you were talking about Benicio del Toro earlier in this discussion. And Machinist, I guess the movie itself can be somewhat forgettable, if not for Christian Bale's physical performance, because the writing is good, but it's really the performance that carries this movie. I mean, the physical alone, he dropped 65 pounds. And keep in mind, he was about to play Batman in 6 months after the wrap of this movie. So he had to gain all that weight and more back. But I read that he was eating an apple a day, obviously lots of water, black coffee, and a little bit of whiskey here and there. And that was his diet for like over a month to get to this weight. So
crazy.
Yeah. I mean, people out there listening, I mean, who amongst us hasn't tried to lose weight? I guess just go on the Christian Bale diet.
The Christian Bale diet sounds scary. My number 1 film, when putting these in order and looking at the movies, I saw how The Machinist was a film about guilt eating the man up to the point of him being skin and bones. And I thought, is there ever a movie where they're trying to cope also with the guilt? And I came up with my number 1 pick, smaller film. Not sure many jawheads have seen it. Came out in 2010. The cast here is Nicole Kidman, Aaron Eckhart, and Miles Teller. The movie I'm speaking about is entitled Rabbit Hole.
Never saw it.
This is a couple who are played by Nicole Kidman and Aaron Eckhart are trying to cope with the death of their child, hit by a car.
Woof.
Seems to be another theme in my list here.
Well, I mean, several of mine as well.
Guilt. Yeah. So their child had been hit by a car, and the driver of that car was a teenager who's played by Miles Teller. But it wasn't like Miles Teller was drunk. It was just one of these accidents where the front gate of their yard was out. He was young. The parents weren't looking. There was like a lot of people at fault all when it happened. The kid just ran out onto the gate right at like the wrong time. Miles Teller was driving by. What's interesting is that Nicole Kidman's character, now this grieving mother, mom that lost her child, actually seeks out Miles Teller's character and actually somewhat befriends him and just wants to talk to him because he himself has, you can just imagine a teenager who was driving a car and killed a kid, what's going on through his mind and the guilt he's feeling. And she starts talking to him, and he expresses to her that he's writing a comic book called The Rabbit Hole about parallel universes. And, maybe he's happy in that parallel universe. And all the characters, the way they're dealing with it, the way a husband and wife can even go on as a couple after something as tragic as that has happened in their lives. It sort of tackles all of that. It's a fascinating movie. And Nicole Kidman is outstanding in Rabbit Hole. I love this movie.
Does she know that Miles Teller is the driver? Oh, okay.
She does. Yeah. But keep in mind, he's not drunk. It's not like he was drinking. Again, it was just a bad timing of an accident where the kid ran out, in front of the house while he's driving by.
And he knows who she is as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah, I got to be honest, dude. I sort of hate that theme in movies, or at least that plot device when a child is killed. But yes, when you're talking about guilt movies, it seems to be unfortunately kind of common.
Any honorable mentions that did not come up, Matt?
I have a couple actually. If we're discussing the loss of a child, Lars von Trier's Antichrist must be mentioned. Things take a extremely dark and almost supernatural turn in this movie, but I think the catalyst at least is an extreme feeling of guilt and a moment of neglect turned tragic. Then, of course, $1 Million Baby. I mean, who can forget the crushing weight of the guilt that Clint Eastwood's character feels at the end of the movie when he's explaining to her the meaning of the word Makushla. Has stayed with me. Both of those movies have stayed with me, as many of these have.
I went with one that probably a lot of jawheads probably had them spring to mind if they saw the movie, Manchester by the Sea.
Yeah.
Which is
I haven't seen it.
Guilt. Right. And we just discussed our favorite movies of the Northeast. I just talked about the film Green Mile with Tom Hanks.
Sure.
You mentioned Shutter Island. One other DiCaprio film. I always talk about Inception being about his guilt of killing his wife and the inception being placed on him to get rid of that guilt. So I do think it deals with that as well.
Definitely agree.
If we missed a movie that deals with guilt and you got a recommendation, we'll read it on the jaw. Shoot us an email, feedback@cinemajaw.com, or you can always shoot us a tweet @cinemajaw. We'll retweet. We'll get that discussion going. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we have Hollywood headlines, plus for the first time, Stump the Movie Guy. I'm nervous to hear what questions Matt came up with. Stick with us, Jawheads.
Hey Jawheads, it's Matt Kay. Wrapping up our month-long celebration of the great Michael Shannon, we bring you this clip from his tremendous role in Take Shelter.
You think I'm crazy? Huh? Is that what he told you? Well, listen up! There is a storm coming! Like nothing you have ever seen, and not a one of you is prepared for it. You think I'm crazy? Hey, I'm talking to you, Russell. Huh? Lewis, you think I'm a thief?
Sleep well in your beds, because if this thing comes true, there ain't gonna be any more.
And we are back on Cinemajaw. Before we get to Hollywood headlines and Stump the Movie Guy, we threw two items into the jaw box. In fact, Matt Kay, you threw both these questions in there. The first one was, I think you called it the Revenge Trilogy. Is that correct?
That is
the
what
Vengeance
I called it.
Trilogy.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's
Well,
the
now
Vengeance Trilogy.
Now we're splitting hairs. This is not like Charlie Hunnam being British or not. Vengeance, revenge. I mean,
I'm sure we're going to get email from somebody that you called it the Revenge Trilogy. It's the Vengeance Trilogy. And the three films are Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, 2002, Old Boy, 2003, and Lady Vengeance, 2005. I'm writing these down in the journal, though, for sure. Might as well watch them all now that we got all this time on our hands.
Indeed.
No excuses, Matt. No excuses. The other question you threw into the jaw box was what year Rope came out.
50s, right?
1948.
Holy moly. That is an old film.
Really going back.
So 60 years, right? Is my math correct? 61,
Over.
62. Wow.
72 years old.
72. Okay. I was 10 years off. Wow. Jesus. That's an old movie.
Insane
that it's still like you can watch it tomorrow and it will be just as impactful. Like he knew things that a lot of filmmakers are still using to this day.
Mm-hmm. Before we close this jaw box, we should mention we already know what film we're watching next week. And that's because we don't have a lot of choice, right, Matt? The theaters are still closed where we're at. So we are still reliant on movies coming out either on video on demand or the streaming services. And we have selected an action movie. We normally would be doing our summer movie preview. We'd be talking about big blockbusters at the theater at this point. So let's pop some popcorn. Let's have some fun. Next week on the show, we are reviewing Chris Hemsworth, his latest film, Extraction, which is out on Netflix right now, Jawheads, if you're listening to this.
It's about a guy who goes to the dentist, right?
And he's just got to get that tooth taken care of.
Got to get it out.
Possibly, we're still discussing, but possibly, Matt, our top 5 favorite rescues in movies.
Oh, that's, I like it.
We're bouncing it around. But Jawheads, if you see Extraction right after you're listening to this podcast, shoot us a quick review of it. We'll read it after our review next week.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Good idea, Ryan.
All right, that brings it to some Hollywood headlines.
All right, well, real quick first, I wanted to bring this up because I had talked about the Quarry being a Western mashup, if you will. And one of the benefits of doing a show for 10 years is that I have all my notes from all the shows we've ever done, going back to episode number 1. And we once did Western mashups a long, long time ago. And do you have any idea what my number 1 Western mashup was, Ryan?
Well, I don't even know if you saw Aliens vs. Cowboys.
No,
or if
and
that
this
was even out when we were doing the
I was
list.
going to say, I don't think it was. Yeah. This was very early.
Oh, you know what it might have been? All right, I'm going to take a stab at it and say From Dusk Till Dawn.
The Three Amigos.
Ooh, nice one.
Yeah, and that comes way back from episode number 72, Ryan, which we recorded about this time of the year in 2011. And the guest was Michael Gallinari, who is a comic book writer.
Right.
Who does some
I
Westerns.
do remember him. The Western actually is, I've always said it, a genre I'm so lacking in. I've went out of my way several times to actually just watch some of the classics, because if I have blind spots, and I have plenty, I have tons of them.
Well, sure.
But people throw out a good Western. I haven't seen it. So it's still something I'm working on is catching up with some of those older classic Westerns.
It's a worthy mission, Ryan. All right, so I guess that brings us to Hollywood headlines. This one comes from South by Southwest. We mentioned this earlier, and now it is live. The 2020 South by Southwest Film Festival has set its virtual selection and screening dates on Amazon, garnering almost 40 shorts, features, and episodic programs to participate in the digital workaround to coronavirus shutdowns. The virtual festival will stream from April 27th through May 6th in front of the Amazon Prime paywall, meaning any user with an Amazon account can access the content. One of the notable films is My Darling Vivian, which is about Johnny Cash's first wife and the mother of his 4 daughters. The film includes never-before-seen footage and appearances from Reese Witherspoon, Joaquin Phoenix, Tim Robbins, Whoopi Goldberg, John C. Reilly, and more.
Nice. I looked at the lineup, and there are a few films, features, Vivian, My Darling Vivian being one of them. It's a documentary. There's a couple other docs that sound interesting. A lot of short films that I think I'll check out. I'm excited. It's cool.
Yeah, no doubt. Me too. That's very cool.
Absolutely. How about this? Midsummer, Uncut Gems, and more A24 props auctioned off for charity. You want to wear the real life May Queen dress donned by Florence Pugh in Midsummer, all for a good cause? A24 is auctioning off a plethora of props from their indie offerings, and all the proceeds are going to charities directly benefiting coronavirus relief. All bids can be placed on the A24 auction website. Different items have different auction dates, so be sure to check back. Go to their website, A24. Look this up on Google. I did, Matt, and I was almost going to put a bid in on an item.
Well, I think it would be awesome if you showed up to Cinemajaw wearing Florence Pugh's headdress from Midsommar.
Right now, it's not even that crazy expensive. This is like a dream of mine to actually have real movie props. It doesn't have to be the biggest thing, but I saw this prop and I thought, boy, that would be great in my little screening room. And it is the box from 8th grade, the time capsule box that she buries in the ground.
Yeah.
That box is up for auction. At the time I was looking at it, it was only the high hundreds, maybe about $1,000. It's still got some days to go. But I thought, boy, if I could get my hands on even something like that and just have it displayed nicely in my movie room, that would make me happy.
Well, hey man, I think you deserve it. One of these days, you should do that for yourself. Hey, and this would be a good time if you have the means, Ryan. Go ahead and do it for charity.
I'm gonna keep my eyes out. I'm keeping my eyes out on these.
All right, we got one more for you. Whitney Houston biopic in the works from Bohemian Rhapsody screenwriter.
Seems like the trend, right? Everybody in that realm of being like a big singer or band gets their own biopic at some point.
All of the great artists of recent years have had one, right? I want to say it started with Johnny Cash, but it certainly didn't. But that's the one in most recent memory that I see as the catalyst for the recent spat of biopics. And we had the Bohemian Rhapsody, Rocket Man. Help me out here. There's so many more.
Oh yeah, there's tons. I can't remember them all myself, but you're right. Before that, we even had The Doors,
which is actually a great one. I'm pretty interested to see the Whitney Houston story.
Me too.
That's one I would definitely check out.
She was a complete superstar, you know? So yeah, I'd totally be interested in checking out a Whitney Houston. I just wonder who would play Whitney Houston. That's
always the question.
I know. And that makes or breaks that movie wholeheartedly. You know, it's not a band necessarily like Queen as big as casting a Freddie Mercury. At least it's the band Queen. When you're talking Whitney Houston, it's just Whitney.
As an amazing of a singer as Freddie Mercury, I don't think anybody can even touch the pipes of Whitney Houston. I mean, those were just some pretty magical pipes she had.
Mm-hmm.
Although, Freddie Mercury was no slouch. Very, very interesting news, Ryan.
There we go. All right, so this brings us, I guess, to Stump the Movie Guy. Like I said, I'm very nervous because behind the curtain here on Cinemajaw, very seldom do we let Matt just go crazy and just have his way. And even during this Zoom call, as I'm saying this, Matt has got this sort of evil grin on his face.
Oh, it's fun.
It really has me nervous.
It's fun. I would probably get to do it more if I didn't fail so hard when we did our Bizarro episode. I don't even know how to open a show here, Ryan.
Oh, you're a total goof. That's why I got to grab the reins.
No, it's just I fly by the seat of my pants, and you're a very regimented type. It's a testament to our team here that we have going. But anyway, it is time for me to play host, Ryan. So I ask you, are you ready for your first question?
Nervous, but ready. Let's go.
All right, here we go. There's a theme. I think you'll pick up on it as we go along here. The great Ewan McGregor has collaborated with director Danny Boyle and screenwriter John Hodge 3 times in the 90s. Name 2 of them.
Wow. Ewan McGregor, Danny Boyle. Let me just think of those.
You could probably think of the obvious one, right?
And this is the 1990s. So the first one is Train Spotting.
Not necessarily the first one, but that is one of them.
That is one.
Yes,
and
you
then,
got one.
Yeah. And then, oh man, another 1990 Danny Boyle.
I really narrowed this down for you, Ryan.
No, hey, that's good. I like this question. This is one that I can sit there and ponder about. I mean, for me, it all just comes down to thinking of Danny Boyle films and what Ewan McGregor was in at that time. There's probably an early one. There may have been an early one possibly before Train Spotting that I might never get. But another Ewan McGregor, Danny Boyle film, 1990s. Is it a big movie? We got another big movie involved?
I mean, I don't think any of Danny Boyle's movies were big.
Big, right.
Especially back then.
Boy, I hate to let the jawheads down, but all I have is Train Spotting, and I mean, I'll just say I know he's not in it 28 Days Later, but
No. And that was in the 2000s.
I was going to say that's not even 90s.
He was also in 1994's Shallow Grave and in 1997, A Life Less Ordinary.
That's
the one I thought you probably would get, The Life Less Ordinary.
Yeah. I've never seen it, but if I somehow could have racked my brain, that's probably in my brain. I know that Danny Boyle directed that. So,
Well, you getting that one wrong does not bode well for the next question, Ryan, because it also involves Danny Boyle, John Hodge, and Ewan McGregor. And I promise they're not all about that. The third one's about something different. But famously, those two, Boyle and Hodge, did not choose McGregor for a role that went to Leonardo DiCaprio instead, which ended their friendship for years. What was that film?
Well, I know this one, Matt.
Oh, okay. All right. You do. You know the story.
Well, I don't know the story, but I'm telling you, I'm pretty good with directors off the top of my head. And I know that Danny Boyle has only worked with Leonardo DiCaprio one time, and that was for The Beach.
The Beach. I did not stump the movie guy.
Yes.
Wait, if I stump you on the third question, do we have to do like a tiebreaker?
No. It's just if I got one right, it flips back over. So all right. I'll be asking the questions. That makes me feel good that I got The Beach.
All right, but I'm doing a good job.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm not hard on The Beach. I know some people loathe that film, but I'm not in that camp. I actually think it's like a guilty pleasure of mine. It has a young Tilda Swinton performance in there when I didn't know exactly how talented she was. And DiCaprio was just coming out of Titanic. I wasn't even that familiar with Danny Boyle and his style. So when I go back and I watch it, it's a treat to me. I like watching that movie.
Can you imagine it with McGregor in it instead of DiCaprio?
Tough. I can't.
Huh? All right. Here's your third question. Just for shits and giggles, Ryan. Here we go. Speaking of great actor-director collaborations, Ryan, Jimmy Stewart collaborated with the great Alfred Hitchcock 4 times. Name them all.
All?
Name them all.
Oh, man. You know what's terrible? And this is why I'm not going to get this one right.
Well, we already named one of them in this show.
Yeah. We have Rope. So that's good. But here's why I'm going to say I get it wrong. Very famously, I get certain actors mixed up in their films.
How can you mix Jimmy Stewart up with anybody?
Because I get him mixed up with Cary Grant. And Cary Grant has worked with Alfred Hitchcock as well numerous times. And so it's like, oh, I want to go there right away. Like I can name the Cary Grants a lot easier than I can name the Jimmy Stewarts. So Jimmy Stewart, I'm going to go with Rope, since it was already mentioned. Boy, oh boy, it's really going to go downhill from there. Everyone I'm thinking about now,
this is a huge one.
Rear view window.
Yeah, close enough. I'll give that one to you. Rear Window.
Rear Window. Yeah, sorry. Rear Window. Oh, I'm going to go with the man who knew too much or didn't know enough or whatever the one title.
I was hoping you wouldn't get that one, so I could say clearly you are not the man who knew too much, Ryan.
Hey, I'm not doing bad here.
No, you got 3 of them. You just need one more.
Oh my goodness. I'm thinking here.
No cheating. You're looking down. Are you looking at notes or something?
No, I'm not. No.
All right.
I wouldn't cheat. I'm having too much fun actually getting the questions. But I think this one's going to stump me right there. I don't want too much dead air here, even though Matt will do a wonderful job editing this, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can edit it out. Take your time. I like watching you squirm.
Oh.
You want to take a stab at it here, Ryan?
It's funny because I just know I'm wrong. The other ones I'm going to give you, I know are Cary Grant. I don't know if he's in it. I've never seen it. I'll say the 39 Steps.
Nope. Sorry. The last one was, you're going to kick yourself. Vertigo.
Oh, see, I thought that's Cary Grant. In my head, I'm thinking Cary Grant.
No, the one that was going to be Stewart that went to Grant was the one that you always bring up.
North by Northwest?
Yes.
Oh.
No.
In my head, see, while we were talking about this, I kept thinking Vertigo was Cary Grant. So don't mention Vertigo. See, that's how I screw those two up.
Yeah. Oh, you did good, man. You got 3 out of 4. That is not bad. Not bad, Ryan. And I did not stump the movie guy.
That's good.
You beat it on your first try, so.
The pressure. It's tougher for sure when you're getting the questions thrown at you.
Yeah, I've actually gotten good at it to the point where I sometimes feel bad for the guests when I cream them. I feel awful. Like I just want the guests to win. Lately, I've been doing well.
All right. Brings us to the end of a great job. We got to thank the sponsors here, Matt.
Yes. Thanks to Overcast and to the Chicago Podcast Co-op who help us get cool sponsors like them.
If you want to support Cinemajaw, and we hope that you do, please leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast.
And while you're at it, click subscribe. It's one extra button for you, and it's a tremendous help to us.
Until next week, I'm Ryan the Movie Guy.
I'm Matt Kay, and keep on jawing about the movies.